What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me as always are my three great co-hosts, Federico Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna. Guys, we're back. It's good to see everyone back here. It's been a while since we had all four of us here on Guarani Vision. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about. So many things are happening in this world of Paraguayan football, both on the pitch and off the pitch. I'm sure there's a lot of things that you guys want to talk about. What's going off the pitch, as we really mentioned it just a couple minutes before we started recording, but that's for another show in itself. But I'm really excited about what's going on with this league race. It seems like, it's starting to change. I mean, everyone's talking about this league race happening in England with Manchester City and Liverpool. We see some some drama over there in Italy with Serie A, but in Paraguay, it seems like we have our own City and Liverpool really fighting it out there for the league. So we'll definitely talk about that. We got Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana. We did see a great result actually in Brazilian soil for one team. Will that help them boost their chances of getting out of the group? We'll see. We can talk about that as well. But I'm happy to be back. I mean, obviously you're going right into May. I mean, the league race is really heating up. Libertadores is also getting into the nitty gritty, you would say, for the Paraguayan team. Sudamericana as well. We'll see what happens there. But how are things been, man? I mean, it's I see there's always been, like, I always wake up every morning on Twitter to see what's going on in Paraguay, and you guys are getting a hell of a lot of rain, man. I mean, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah, it's been a rainy month, I would say. We've had a lot of rain in the last month, a lot of mosquitoes going around here, waiting for colder temperatures around here in South America. It was nice to hear you compare our Paraguayan league to the Italian league, to the Premier League. That was beautiful, Roberto. You got to do that for every intro. I'm happy to see everybody back. Maria had a pretty long spring break. I think she was the last one to come back. I've heard spring break gets pretty crazy over there, but I didn't think it was going to take her that long. But
she is in Miami. What do you expect?
There was probably a lot of partying. No, she was actually working a lot, so I'm happy to see her back here, so we can hear her opinion about her Olympia, obviously about the national team. We're obviously going to talk about that in another episode, in a special episode, which I hope a lot of people do watch. Also, we're going to talk about the league here. We're going to talk about Cerro Porteño, the crazy week they had, beating Libertad and then losing to Tacuary. I don't know. You guys are going to have to explain this to me. How does this happen? And obviously talk about Resistencia too. This is one of the surprises of the league. This is one of the teams that's there in the first spots also. So yeah, we need to give them some attention also. It's great to be back, Roberto. Let's get this ball rolling.
Let's get this ball rolling as well. I think we also have to see of another guy who I think is very happy, maybe not after what we saw from Cedro, but definitely seeing from what we saw from his Arsenal, defeating Chelsea midweek. Obviously, I was there at NBC. So I obviously, you can thank me. You don't have to thank Mikel Arteta or any of the players that scored. You can thank me for being in the studio that day that Arsenal beat Chelsea to boost their chances of top four. But yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it, I think, in one of your articles on your blog, Ralph, which obviously you can always mention, Paraguay Football WordPress. He does a great job on that. And that's where I took that inspiration, Fed, of we have our very own City Liverpool race with the likes of Cedro and Libertad. And now as we get into the last two games for both these sides, especially after they faced each other, we're really getting into the nitty gritty, into the league action.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't decided who's City and who's Liverpool in this. Who's Pep, who's Klopp between Garnero and
rich team maybe would be Libertad. Team with history would be Liverpool. Makes sense.
Yeah, we could do that. Although Cerro have never won any European trophy or continental trophies, I should say, like Liverpool. So that's a thorn, I guess, in that analogy. But yeah. Wow, there's been a lot going on. The other team we should just mention, because I like that Fede mentioned Resistencia, that are doing well and got that draw last night with Libertad. Probably should have won. We'll talk about that in more detail. But also Nacional. Nacional were doing really well last year. Then they struggled so much so that they got rid of their coach, Rorro Lopez. And now they brought in Pedro Sarabia, who used to be at 12 de Octubre, and they've won 4 in a row. And the only other teams that have managed to win 4 games in a row this season are Cerro and Libertad. So Nacional, they're not going to challenge for the title because of the bad start they had. But that's really interesting to see them come alive again after they sold their best player from last year, the top goal scorer to Ecuador. But now they found this other guy, this Argentinian guy, Facundo Brurera, and he's like scoring all these goals. So they're an exciting team to watch as well. So lots going on, lots of league action to keep us busy, and that's what's been keeping the players busy, as we'll talk about, because they're getting very tired with all this action on the field.
It almost does seem like the Premier League a little bit, with all these games happening almost every other day. And I'm switching gears now to Maria here, which we're happy to have her back here after an extended spring break, like Fede like to mention. I think obviously for Olympia's case, I mean, yeah, you would think that maybe for the league they're not really going for it. But having said that, I think looking at how their Copa Libertadores group is being set up, obviously they're with Cerro, they're with Peñarol, and they're with Colón. I think, heading into the next few, literally exactly next week, they are taking on Colón at home. So I think all the attention really is focused on that Copa Libertadores draw and, really trying to get out of the group, because I think for the league, I think it's still up to those two teams that we had mentioned in Libertad and Cerro Porteño.
Yeah, hey guys. I'm happy to be back. I've been off the grid for a little bit, just working a lot, and I think with Olympia, it's a special situation like always, but we'll get more into details about them. I'm looking forward to talking about how they've been doing, because it's been crazy. Been a crazy month for them, I think, and despite all that, they've been doing pretty decent compared to the previous seasons. So looking forward to talking about that, and just talking about anything in Paraguay. As always, there's always something crazy going on in Paraguay. So yeah, I'm happy to be back, and let's get the roll going, like Fede said.
Let's get it going. But first, let's go straight from back on Sunday, where we saw kind of this big clash between our City and Liverpool comparisons. I think it's going to be the last one that we do it here. But we did see both Cerro Porteño and Libertad. This game had been really built up. We spoke about it last week, about how it's really the top two teams. And really, I guess the winner of this could indeed have a good advantage to win the league. And now what we saw from Cerro Porteño on the weekend was a complete and utter demolition from them. We saw them win 4-0. We'll talk about this game first. And Ralph, I'll go to you on this one. Goals from Aquino, Sergio Diaz, Carlos Rolón, and for the first time, Marcelo Martins Moreno scoring his first goal for the club, literally a week after his father had passed away. This was one-way traffic. And one of the things that I think was going into this game, and we spoke about it last week, was how someone was going to stop Enciso, because he was the one that was kind of spearheading this Libertad side. He is the top goal scorer, still is the top goal scorer of the league at the moment, hitting double digits. But Cerro were just in complete control this entire game. And surprisingly, you would think for such a tight affair between, two teams that are very much similar, they like to score goals and really demonstrate their attacking prowess. This was one-way traffic for Cerro Porteño. Were you surprised for the result of Cerro Porteño being able to score that many, or for Libertad just not being able to go past that really outstanding defense, really the best defense that Cerro Porteño have at the moment?
I was very surprised by the result, the size of the result. I mean, Libertad simply don't lose by 4 goals. The last time they had was something like 2014. They're not a team that gets rolled over like that. And what I was most surprised, though, was Cerro, how they lined up. So Chiqui Arce actually lined up with a back 3. It's something I thought he'd never done before, but a shout out to Pepe Torres, who's on Tigo Sports on the touchline. He remembered a game against Guarani when he had tried out that back 3. But that was a big surprise. But after the game, Chiqui Arce actually told us, no, we've been practicing this for a long time, but the players haven't been convinced totally. Maybe I wasn't convinced, but today was the day we had to do it. And why did they have to do it? Because of Enciso, who you mentioned. They just couldn't afford to have Enciso go in one-on-one against any of their defenders, because he will beat them and he will score, which is what he always does. And they also couldn't afford to to try and press very intensely in the middle, which they did do without that cover behind them of three defenders. So you had those two factors worked really well, I thought, for Cerro. So first, having that three at the back, you got Enciso very isolated. Libertad didn't have a single shot on target in the whole game. So that just shows you how well that system worked. And also what they had was in the middle, their ball recovery was so good. So Cerro weren't trying to dominate possession too much, knowing that Libertad were hoping for that to hit them on the counterattack. So what they were doing is as soon as Libertad did win the ball in the final third or in Cerro's final third or in the middle, they were like biting back really quickly. And Carrascal was very good at that. Pica Lucena was doing very well. And that breaking up the play didn't really allow Libertad to create any counterattacks. And then I don't know what happened with Libertad. I mean, that's from the Cerro side. For Libertad, maybe they're frustrated. For sure Garnero wasn't expecting them to line up that way. So he couldn't find a way to resolve it because as soon as he tries to change something for the second half, Cerro scored that third goal quite early into the second half. So, and then the game's away from them. So for Libertad, it must have just been a shock to see the system, but also they didn't really have the way to the kind of tactical intelligence, I guess, to try and adapt during the game to anything that was going on. But yeah, brilliant performance from Cerro in that match. And another thing to remember is they played the Colón game midweek. It's a fairly similar team. Someone like Beto Espinola isn't there. He's injured, which is also part of the reason they go for the three. But they had almost the same team they were using against Colón. So those players must have been very tired, but came into it and went for it. Whereas Libertad had played a kind of changed team against Caracas, and then they went to this game again with supposedly fresher players and players with more energy, but just weren't up to the task. So yeah, brilliant game from the Azulgrana.
No, I totally get Rob's point. Actually, it was Cerro Porteño's best game. Even their coach said it after the game was over. I mean, this was their best game in 3 years probably. They were probably waiting for a performance like this, especially against Libertad, which is a team that has gone to that stadium and beat them several times. And it was a battle against these two teams for the tournament right now. And you had to keep in mind, though, that Libertad came into this game with the advantage. I mean, they knew that Cerro Porteño was the team that needed the points, that needed the win. Maybe they were even thinking of drawing this game. I thought maybe it was part of the strategy of Libertad just giving Cerro Porteño the ball, just because Cerro Porteño is a dominant team with the possession. So you were kind of waiting for that. But I was also waiting for a response from Libertad, and that never actually came. That never happened in the game. So I think, as some commentators like to say, only one team showed up. Libertad really never showed up to this match. I mean, we were waiting a lot more to see a lot more from Julio Enciso. We were waiting to see a lot more from Roque Santa Cruz. I was waiting to see something out of that midfield between Cristian Riveros and Ernesto Caballero, and they were surpassed really by Cerro Porteño's midfield, and especially Claudio Aquino. I mean, he kind of took over, just like it happened against Colón. I think he was probably the leader in that midfield for Cerro Porteño. And when he's turned on, when he's doing those important plays, when he's even scoring, because he opened the game up with a brilliant goal from outside the box. So when he's doing all that stuff in the game, when he's putting all the passes for his teammates, that Cerro Porteño is going to do the job a lot easier. They don't have another player like him, so when he's working, when he's doing the right things, you're expecting Cerro Porteño to have a great game. I do think, just like Ralph was saying, they kind of found their identity again in that second half against Colón in Libertadores, and that came right before this Libertad game. So I think it was the great boost for them to play against Libertad, and this was their best game. I think there's a lot more positive than negative for Cerro Porteño, obviously, after playing this game, especially seeing that they got a lot closer to Libertad, and now they they pretty much depend on themselves. If Libertad would have won this game, they would probably be gone, and it would have been a lot harder to catch up to them. So I think it's the best thing that could have happened to the tournament also just now, because you have the whole second half of the tournament, and you're going to be on top of these two teams, even maybe a chance for other teams to catch up. I mean, who knows? If these two teams lose a couple of more games, you might have Resistencia back in the fight. You might have another team back in there, Nacional. I'm not expecting much more from the other teams, but maybe we have 3 or 4 teams going up for it. Right now, it's still in between these two teams, and Cerro Porteño really showed that they wanted it in this game against Libertad. They looked hungry, and they really went for it.
Well, obviously going into the games that we saw midweek, literally just days after this game, we saw both Libertad and Cerro Porteño in action. We saw Libertad play last night at the time of recording against Resistencia, like you have mentioned. Fede, they were winning 1-0 thanks to a goal from Julio Enciso. Again, 11 goals, another goal for him. And even though what we didn't see in the game against Cerro, I guess the scouts that are coming from Europe are still interested in this kid. And so he's still showing up, even if it's not in all the games. And it almost went badly, actually, for Libertad, as in the last 3 minutes of the game, Tiburon Torres' Resistencia scored twice in 3 minutes. That almost gave him the 3 points, which would have been a famous win and would have actually given Cerro Porteño a bit of hope to be able to take top of the table. But it took a last-minute draw from Lorenzo Megalejo to make it 2-2 on the night. Regardless of that, the following day, Cerro Porteño took on Tacuarembó at the Defensores del Chaco, hoping that Cerro Porteño can get the win. But you have to remember, this is a Tacuarembó side. I think that, had 2 wins in their last 4 games. So, they were on some good form, despite everyone saying that maybe it wasn't a team that might be a pushover. And boy, they were not a pushover at all. 2-0 on the day. Ralph, I'll go to you on this one. What the hell did we see? Because this was just one-way traffic. When we saw with one-way traffic from Libertad, boy, they got a taste of their own medicine from Tacuarembó. Goals from Valdez and Vera to give all 3 points to Tacuarembó, and now cut the gap to still 1 point, where Cerro could have taken a even bigger advantage to go top of the table, but they failed to do so.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is, for all that effort that Cerro gave in the game against Libertad, then this become fast. And what we had seen was they were already depleted by injury. Lucena had gone off in the game against Libertad, and so had Sergio Diaz at halftime. Neither of those played today as we record, in the match against Tacuarembó. So Chiqui is already thinking, well, I have to play the Emiliano game, then we have to go or Peñarola coming here. So then he has all these things in his mind, like trying to balance the team, and he's running out of central midfielders. So what happens in the game, in 8 minutes, Pires de Mota is injured, the central midfielder, and he's run out. He doesn't have any on the bench. So he has Carrascal playing, and then he has to try and, fit square pegs into round holes. And he decides to go for, he brings on Vargas, a left back, and he puts his left back, Alan Rodriguez, kind of more into the middle, but it's not his natural position. And with that, I think what Tacuarembó did very well with their manager is they sense this opportunity. And Tacuarembó is a team that's quite famous for playing like a low block counter-attack football. But actually in that first half, they dominated possession, because they realized, well, Cerro have got nothing in midfield. Carrascal can't hold this on his own. And they really took the game to Cerro. I mean, they created more chances in the first half, and they got their reward. It was a goal from a set piece, from a corner. And from that, Cerro were struggling, because in the second half, again, they try and make a few changes, I guess. Moreno Martins had started the game. He comes off, and they try and do something with Alfio Oviedo, who's another player who's just come back from injury. So you can see how we've talked about the squad at Cerro, that it's not as strong, it's not as deep as Libertad. And there they were really stretching, and the second goal comes from, I think, is a mistake by Carrascal, and then maybe Benitez as well. But it's like those tired, sloppy mistakes that Cerro were making as they really struggled in that game. They came alive at the very, very end, but it was too late, because, I mean, Alfio Oviedo hits the bar. I think Aquino has a couple of good chances, but then Aquino's also injured. I mean, Aquino got injured, twisted his ankle. He did like this. For the people listening, he did like the substitution sign. And they're like, no, we don't have any more. We've already made 3 substitutions. So he had to play on that last 20 minutes, kind of almost limping through those last 20 minutes. So I think what happened tonight, not to take away from Tacuaru, who what they did really well was took advantage of the situation and really took the game to Cerro. But you just saw the team were on their last legs. And let's see what kind of side they put against Ameliano at the weekend before the Libertadores, because they need to rest. These guys just need to rest up for the Peñarol match, which I think if you have to juggle between the two, the Peñarol game's the big one.
That's the hardest thing for the Paraguayan teams, right? Play every 3 days and try to keep your base of players healthy. I think that's been the hardest part for Cerro Porteño during this lapse of games. They pretty much lost a player for every game, and that's happened over the last 4 or 5 games, and very important players, in defense, in midfield, and we talked about the forwards that Cerro were missing for these important games in Libertadores, especially against Colón. They got a couple back, like just Ralph was saying, Alfio Viedo. That's just what's going to happen, and you're going to have to work around that. That's the coach's job. I mean, you can't really go from playing your best game in 3 years to this. I mean, that's the big shock for me. That's the big surprise. I mean, not get as many chances as you're accustomed to see from Cerro Porteño, and not handle the game the proper way. So yeah, it's not easy to be there on the lead. It's not easy to be there on top and have the pressure on you. I think that kind of happened to Libertad against Cerro Porteño, and that might have happened to Cerro Porteño against Tacuarí also. Cerro had the pressure of having to win the game, and they really didn't handle it really very well. And Tacuarí just knew what was going to happen in the game. Just as Ralph was saying, they knew that their game plan had to be play on the counter attack. They don't have much to do damage up there. They don't have a strong forwards, but they do have a really nice midfield. And Robert Pereira has been around for a couple of weeks now, so he knows his players a little bit better. And just like Roberto was saying, they won a couple of games recently, and that's kind of put their morale up there just for these kind of games. And when these small teams go up against Cerro, Olimpia, Guarani, they want to show off. These are the games where the players can make the difference, and they can be on the highlights for the rest of the week. And Tacuarí players are going to love that. Nobody's going to talk about Cerro now. They're going to talk about the goals that were made from Tacuarí and the big surprise. And it was a surprise to see this result midweek. I think nobody was waiting for it. Cerro Porteño was the big favorite, but hey, I love this competition. I love the small teams beating the big fish.
Now, Maria, I want to go to you on this one, because after what we saw from both Libertad and Cerro, and I think we could still agree that perhaps we look at these two teams as the favorites. One of them will definitely win the league title. But having said that, after what we saw, do you think that there's still a chance that maybe we can, and I'll actually ask all of you guys, if you guys are curious to answer, do we maybe see a shift in other teams now saying, wait a minute, look at these teams, they are definitely beatable. If teams that are of much lesser caliber are able to get results against teams that are better, does that motivate the other teams and say, hang on, let's make it a race. Let's include ourselves in that race and not leave it to these two guys. Maria, I'll go to you first on this one.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely. That's something that any team can dream of, going against big teams and actually doing something and showing off what they are capable of. I think that's like the motivation every time that they actually play. So, for teams like Resistencia, looking at them and seeing, hey, these guys are top of the table, if they can do it, we can do it. So, when they play the big guys, Olimpia, Cerro, Guarani, Libertad, it's like you guys said, it's like their time to shine, and not just for the team to shine, but also for the players individually, can have players. Who knows? There could be recruiters around watching them, and then they go to that team next year. So for them, it's definitely a must do well time. I don't know if there's a word for that, but but yeah, it's a definitely time to shine, and nothing can go wrong. Everything that they trained for is that they have to put it to play at this time. So yeah, I think it's definitely a something to look forward to for them.
For Resistencia, I mean, they're the most interesting. I'm just looking at the table here. They've scored 21 goals, and only Libertad and Cerro have actually scored more. So Resistencia are like quite an interesting side because they can get out of situations by attacking. They're not a team that has to hold on and not concede to try and win games, which is what happened against Libertad. I mean, they didn't win in the end, but they conceded a very early goal to Julio Enciso, but then they were able to fight back and find 2 goals later on in the match. So Resistencia are exciting. And Tiburon Torres, just to remind, I mean, he won the league with Libertad. He won the league with Cerro. He's a manager of pedigree. He's won championships before. So that's a team that you probably think they're not going to make it because these small teams have never really made it since. I can't even think of the last time like a smaller side was winning the league. Maybe like a Sol de America is even a historic team, but that's in like the 80s. So whether they can go the full way, I don't know, but they're in quite a good position there. And then Olimpia, I would say maybe not. Olimpia on almost the same points, but Olimpia have the Libertadores. So the teams that have the double competition, like Cerro and Olimpia, but don't have the squad capabilities, is going to be hard. So if you had to look at one that could maybe put a cat among the pigeons, let's say, it's going to be Resistencia, I think.
Let's see if they can repeat it though in the second half of the tournament. That obviously that's going to be the big challenge for Resistencia. But hey, they got this. They got here so far, and props to them. I mean, props to the work that Roberto Torres is doing. And just as Ralph was saying, they've scored so many goals. And if you look at most of their score sheets, they've actually had several games where they scored more than 3 goals, which is something that you don't see much here in the Paraguayan league. So yeah, they've been pretty hot scoring, and most of all, I like their attacking football. We just talked about Tacuary. They play a counter attack. General Caballero, which is another one of the new teams on the first division, they try to like play like a balanced football. It's not either defend. It's not more defensive football or an attacking football. But Resistencia, you're gonna get attacked by them. I mean, they went to Libertad's ground and they didn't put more defensive players in. They actually played the same way they've been playing so far, and I love that about a team. That they don't care about the shirt that's in front of them. They're gonna play their style and they're gonna go out there and give it their all. Obviously, if you almost beat Libertad, now you have to beat Tacuary on the weekend. Right now, Resistencia, they are not even thinking about going back to the second division because they have like 10, 12 points ahead of the other teams that just got to the first division. So their mindset has to be above now. They have to go one step beyond this. They have to either qualify for a Sudamericana, a Libertadores next year, or try to challenge one of the big teams for the title. But I think they have their feet on their ground, and I think every player in that team knows what they're doing, and we have pretty exciting players on that team, actually. Players that probably didn't make it in bigger teams and are getting maybe another chance in this Resistencia. There's a lot of stories like that on that roster.
It would be kind of fun, I guess. Besides always besides us being fans of our own teams, I think it would be fun to see a different team win, the season. So that would be something interesting, I guess.
It's been a while since we've seen one of the non-big powerhouse teams win this league. And, I think what we saw over the last few days is thinking, okay, wait a minute. It is open for everyone. And there is that sort of unpredictability. Yes, you would think 9 times out of 10 that the top teams with the bigger paychecks and better players will win. But I think what we saw from Resistencia and from Taekwondo is thinking, okay, I think we can see something different now. And I think now, as we switch gears to where, these big Paraguayan teams are looking into hoping not to get shocked by the lower teams, these Paraguayan teams shifting gears to the Copa Libertadores are looking to then also make their stamp against the Brazilians and the Argentines. So we look into the Copa Libertadores real quick, looking into some of the groups that we have. Firstly, let's go to Libertad's group. They actually were able to get a win against Caracas, a 2-1 win. And now we'll have to take on Atlético Paranaense, the reigning Copa Sudamericana champion over there at the Defensores del Chaco. They'll take on them next week. Looking at well as Cerro's group with Olimpia, they will be hosting Peñarol, a Peñarol side that actually ended up beating Olimpia over there in Montevideo a couple days ago, and Olimpia taking on a Colón side that ended up losing to Cerro Porteño. So you got 3 teams there looking to make a stamp. And Fed, I'll go to you on this one first, because I think looking at it, really for all these 3 sides, it's the case of getting the points necessary. Cerro Porteño got a really big win over Colón, where they were losing early in the first half and then ended up scoring 3 times to win the game. I would assume that if they're able to get this win against Peñarol, that puts them in really good pole position, not just to go to the round of 16, but to win the group. And for Olympia's case, they need to win this one. It's no excuse whatsoever for an Olympia side to not get any sort of result that is not a win, especially playing at home.
Yeah, you have Olimpia. They already played 2 games, just as Libertad and Cerro Porteño. But Olimpia is probably on a tighter situation, just because they haven't been able to win yet. I don't know what sense you guys got out of this Libertadores so far. I'm seeing, it's competition. It's pretty fair right here. I mean, I'm not seeing big scores. I'm not seeing a big team yet in Libertadores. So
I mean, we saw Palmeiras smash a Bolivian side 8-1. I mean, I don't know if that's a fair barometer, but yeah, you got that in terms of big scores.
Yeah, but you're getting a lot of ties. I'm seeing a lot of 1-0 tight games, and I'm kind of surprised actually by that. It's actually a very competitive season, apparently, at least as it's starting out that way in Libertadores. And I think Olimpia, they deserved a little bit more in Montevideo. I think that wasn't a fair result, to be honest, just looking at the match. But yeah, they have to get a lot better, especially with things that are happening in the locker room with players and with the head coach. Also, taking the right calls. It is a season to see new players, to give opportunities to young players, and that's usually not easy to handle for the coach. Working through that process of becoming a star, of becoming a big player in a big team. And I do think Olimpia is kind of starting to struggle in that. After getting to this stage, which I think is already an achievement itself, for Olimpia to be here in the group stage after all the teams that they beat, it's a big achievement for them this year. I don't think they should be aiming that high in Libertadores, but I do obviously want to see them fight it and hopefully see that they get back into this group, because I would love for them, especially in that last game of the group stage against Cerro Porteño. I want to see a final in that game. I want to see both teams going for something in that last game. I hope Olimpia doesn't get to that game eliminated or something like that. And for Cerro Porteño, it was just key to win that game against Colón and put them back in their place, especially just because getting that result means that you have some margin for error. And the same thing I would say for Libertad. They had a great result in La Paz. I don't think many teams are going to draw up there against the strongest. Paranaense is not having their best moment right now, as the Brazilian league just kicked away. They're in one of the last spots. They barely beat the strongest 1-0 last week. So maybe it is a good moment to play against these Brazilian teams, just because they're starting out their season. Most of these teams are hiring new players, but those new players are not available yet for the Brasileirão, which is a long tournament. You usually see the best of the Brazilian teams in the second half of the year. So maybe it's your opportunity, just like it was for Guarani also in Sudamericana. They got to tie against Inter in Porto Alegre. So maybe it is those opportunities to beat these Brazilian sides. I hope Libertad can do that. They kind of need a big game like that against a powerhouse, a big team, just to show it to the continent and to show it to themselves that that they're a strong team and that they can get back into Libertadores, especially after losing some ground in the local league.
Yeah, I agree that the Libertad have got arguably one of the easiest Brazilian sides now, because, well, maybe also there's América Mineiro that are very new to the competition as well. But Paranaense haven't scored yet in the local league. I think they just came off a big win, but in the Copa Brazil against the side, like a regional side. So I think for Libertad, they will feel at least they can take that game on a par. I'm trying to remember. I don't have to hand my stats. I do usually have all my stats for Libertadores, but I think they played Paranaense recently and managed to get a draw with them. I can't remember if that was Sudamericano or Libertadores recently, but I think they'll be giving it a go. And to all the problems we spoke about Cerro, about being very tired and all that kind of stuff, Libertad's the opposite. They keep rotating players. Their issue is going to be that maybe they rotate so much that players aren't able to form some of those kind of associations or partnerships with each other, because the team is always chopping and changing. Like someone like Barbosa, of course, he only played his first league game last night because Barbosa had been suspended from the local league. And it meant in the local league, like the centre-back partnerships, there'd been like 7 different ones or something in those opening 10 games. So that could be Libertad's issue. But I think on paper, they have a strong enough team to win that game. And then the real test is for Olimpia that we're talking about, because even that Peñarol beat Olimpia, but Peñarol are very strong at home and not so good away. I would suggest. I mean, if you look at their recent Libertadores form at home, they're a really good team, but they don't seem to do as much outside of their country, outside of Uruguay. So I think for Cerro, they'll be targeting that for a win, and for Olimpia, it's the big pressure on them that they have to do something against Colon, who are coming back. Colon, they should have just camped out in Asunción because they're getting all these games here.
Yeah, and obviously, Maria, I mean, looking at this one, I mean, you would think that you could feel confident for these Paraguayan sides to do well in this competition. And hell, I think if they're able to get all 3 teams the wins that they need, that puts them in a good position to really get out of the group.
I mean, like Fede said, they have been doing well so far, and I don't think a lot of us expected them to go this far into the competition. So for them to stay and to continue in the way that they're doing, and staying alive in the competition, it's really a lot to take and a lot to do for the teams, especially playing simultaneously with in the Paraguayan season. So I think that they're doing very well, and especially Olimpia, they had one of the most competitive teams out there so far, and then also facing their major rival in the same competition, in both competitions that they're playing in. So it's been a rough ride for most of them. I expect them to keep going. Actually, I do hope that they get out of the stage and see how far they can go. Obviously, aim for the highest and aim for winning the competition. But if they can't get there, getting as far as they can, it's still a good thing. They're still probably gonna get money out of it. I guess in the sense of talking about Olimpia, comparing to last season, I think that they should be really proud of themselves So I just think that they have to keep their heads up.
Absolutely. We will definitely see what happens to all those sides in the league and also in the Copa Libertadores as we close off to another episode of Guarani Vision. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.